All right, let's get the conversation started. There was a big hullabaloo a couple of weeks back when a young lady searched unprofessional hair on Google, and what came up was several women of color, mainly black women, with natural hairstyles, big fros. So she wondered, is this kind of giving a view from Google that natural hair or the movement is unprofessional? And I just want to kind of throw it out to the panel here. I'll start with you, Marcus, because of course a lot of people were saying, oh my goodness, Google is racist. Mm-hmm. You know, of course they were willing to jump to that. Mm-hmm. But I mean, your view, what did you make of it?
Perhaps it's a factor of our own, it's a reflection of who we are as society. Because I believe that what Google gives us is a mirror of what we think. You look at the Kenyan workplace, for example. We are yet to get to the point where we are actually comfortable with women coming to work and going to a high-powered meeting in a fro, going in a French breed, yes, going in a twist out. What if we started flipping that narrative? And I'm glad it started. Yeah. We have a lot of people out there, and this is why the conversation came up. We have a lot of people out there who are now saying, okay, listen, this is what our hair looks like. Yeah. So professionalism doesn't mean that I should mimic what someone else naturally looks like, yes, but I should be accepted for who I am. Right. So maybe in how we're doing our blog posts, our Instagram posts, let's put out a lot more content on our own as well, being proactive in it. Yeah.
You raise a really good point in that it's something that is natural to you. Yes. But now has been misconstrued or twisted to be no, but it's not straight, which is not professional. Hence, it should not be in the workplace. So, I mean, Tessie, for you, do you feel it's a racial bias against people of color or people with natural hair in the workplace generally, not just maybe an algorithm that randomly picked things because of a tag, you know?
I think it absolutely is a racial bias because it's based. Tech is based on what people actually contribute to the internet, what you search, like you said, the content that's out there. So I think it really, like you've said, raises the issue of narratives. What are the narratives on the internet? And it's so important that women, black women, continue to produce content like this, to be able to say, this is us, this is our voice, we think we're professional, we should be taken seriously, and putting that content on the internet to be seen. It's also about the representation within those institutions. Okay. If Google has an all-white board or people who don't understand, you know, why this is an issue, then there's no way that these issues will change. They won't make technical changes to the algorithms to be able to change the way that this content is being seen by people.
And I'll give an example. I was watching a TED Talks by Andreas Ekström. He's a Swedish journalist and author, and he just gave the example of how when Michelle Obama was searched a couple of years back, there was an image that went viral of her with a primate face. And they felt it was very disrespectful of the US First Lady and decided, you know what, let's clean the algorithm and clean the search so that when it comes up, it's professional images of the First Lady. And then a few years later, there was that terrorist attack in Norway, and a Norwegian blogger told people, anytime we search this man's name, put a picture of dog feces. So anytime it comes up, this is what image we see of this individual. And it went viral, and of course it happened. Anytime you search the guy's name, that came up. And in that instance, Google decided not to respond. And so here, Andreas was raising the query of, when do we draw the line? If there's enough noise to change the narrative, as you were saying, would Google, in fact, you know, want to step in and actually make the changes? But, you know, Bonnie, for you, what was your take in terms of seeing this, and should Google intervene, or should we change the narrative ourselves in how we search and how we view these things?
We have to look at it as a broader thing. From the time you are born, you are taught that the white is good. You know, anything that is white is good. So it's something that has been taught to your parents, your grandparents. So by the time it's getting to you, you sort of need to unlearn that and realize that even my hair, as kinky as it is, even dreadlocks, you know, it's just, there's literally no difference between dreadlocks and a weave. If you look at it technically, you get it's a different style, all that. But it's just the dreadlocks come from a certain culture, the weave comes from a certain culture, and this culture is elevated above this one. So this is looked as professional just because it comes from that culture. You get? So what we need to do is we need to uncolonize our minds.
Go ahead, Marcus.
It's interesting that you raise that, because if going even back to our school system as well, it's interesting that for a girl to go to school in their fro, I'm hoping it's changing now. But I had this conversation with someone 2 years ago. Their kid was actually suspended from school for going to school in a fro.
In a Kenyan school?
Yes.
Wow. Wow.
And it's a pretty, what you'd call progressive school.
Yeah.
And for a kid to learn at that age, for a child to learn at that age, that my hair is not what's accepted,
Yeah.
Exactly.
In my culture.
Yes.
In my culture, yeah.
Yeah.
then it starts to raise quite a few questions
Yeah. Yeah.
in terms of what we prioritize as being acceptable and unacceptable.
Yeah.
If you have schools making rules like that, they are already being having an institutionally racial bias. So we can't just say, oh, you know, we should continue to talk and say and put our narratives out there if institutions are not making changes to be able to accommodate different people and the way that, you know, African hair is and different types
I mean, I
of
think that's a
people.
good point, and I mean, I want to bring you in because, you know, when looking at images, I decided to do my little research online. So I went to Bing, I went to Google and looked up what child. I just put child in the search box, clicked, and it was all Caucasian. Woman, all Caucasian. Man, all Caucasian. Rich, mainly Caucasian. Poor, mainly people of color. So for the people who don't know any better that, oh, this is just an algorithm or maybe a mirror of society, and people who are exposed and educated to think beyond that, do you feel that we should put enough pressure on an institution, like you're saying, on Google or schools to say, no, change it?
For any revolutionary change to happen, it has to start from the lowest of levels. If you look back into history, you know, our freedom fighters, the likes of Luthuli and all African freedom fighters, they fought for three things, when it comes to my understanding. One was economic independence. Another one was restoration of the African dignity. And a third one was generally our independence as African people, you know, to make the choices that we want to make. We were colonized, yes. We got our independence, yes. But our minds, are they independent yet?
Right.
You know, I actually did my research as well. I decided to see, okay, what women influence the narrative anywhere. It's women in media, it's maybe the celebrities, women maybe who have made it to top levels of management.
Right.
And if you search women in media in Kenya, or ladies in media, all our ladies have straight
hair.
silky,
Exactly,
soft hair.
Yeah.
If you do the same for the actresses, you know, the message we're taking out there for that 13-year-old who is still trying to discover herself and know herself as a person and try to build her identity is, this is how beauty is defined. Beauty is light, beauty is silky hair. You know, if you want to look beautiful, you have to have a certain level of makeup. If you want to be classy, you have to have a certain type of font. So I think before we get to the institutions, we need to change the narratives ourselves. We need to break those chains within our minds ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, is this, what are we portraying subconsciously as a women population, African or black women population? I think it comes down to that.
And that's a good point, because you bring to remembrance a young lady called India Beale, and she did a photograph kind of spectrum of women who were mainly white, middle-aged, and she had them don black hairstyles, so cornrows, but in corporate, you know, kind of clothes. And it got a lot of reaction because people were saying, okay, what's this all about? It kind of took them off, because you're seeing a white woman in her suit, but she has some really weird hip hop kind of style going on. And the reason why India said she did it is just to start that conversation, to disrupt the narratives, and to show, is it really about that or my competency and what I can do in the job, as opposed to what my hair looks like. And really stemmed for her, at least, from working in a very prestigious university, and she was interning there, and she had a very big fro, and people wondering, what is she all about? And they looked at her image and her outward first before what can she bring to the table. And so she decided, you know what, let me put this in picture form and start the conversation. You know, and I think it was really bold of her, but it also kind of made me think, so what is the big deal about us having our natural hair? on air, for instance, or having dreads in the workplace. Because even in the US, I know a lot of times for a lot of young men, they have to cut their dreads off before they get into corporate because it is not acceptable. Or you're usually seen as a creative, oh, that's allowed, you know, and that's the only space that you, that you're allowed to have that. But I think when you look back historically at how black hair, especially the fro, it was the resistance. It was you standing up against the establishment. So now it's still seen as militant, even though it's not. It's just a lot of women now embracing their natural curls. And Tessie, of course, you know, you've written a lot about that.
I've never relaxed my hair. I never had relaxer. I was brought up with natural hair and to really love my hair. So for me, it's really just
it came
the only
naturally.
thing I love.
Pun intended.
Exactly, it came naturally.
Came naturally.
And it's the only. It's what I love and how I like how I look in my natural hair, and that's why I wear it like that. So when I began to like understand, you know, the politics behind it and why, you know, it's associated with that. It made me love it more because it made me realize the history. But at the same time, you know, you just want to wear your hair naturally. You don't want to be associated with any. You just want to look the way you look without, you know, the association. So I think there needs to be a broader, you know, understanding and also an appreciation that some women actually just don't like natural hair, and that's also
and should be allowed to.
And that's a choice, and it should be respected as equally as someone who's choosing to wear their hair naturally.
Okay, and I think on that note, that's a good place to kind of leave this and take a short break here on Victoria's Lounge. When we come back, we'll be talking about the blessed or blessed generation. All right, welcome back. You're watching Victoria's Lounge. Remember, hashtag Victoria's Lounge is how you can chime into the conversation on social media. We're about to get really blessed during this segment. I think it was 2 weeks ago, a study by a group called A Well-Told Story came out and revealed that 65% of Kenyan youth do not mind having a sponsor. It's funny, during the break we said how the word has been so tainted that you can not even take it so seriously now. And Amina, you know, we're dealing with a new generation. And someone actually on social media was saying, the sponsor thing is not new, and we've talked about it on the show as well, because it's happened. People have had someone to take care of them, and that's happened for generations. But now it's become acceptable, a part of the culture. You know, so what do you think is driving it, at least among the young people now?
I think it's this whole idea of shortcuts. If you look at previous generations, they were not that inclined to shortcuts like we are now. People want to make fast money. And sometimes I feel that it could be a gap on the previous generation on how they raised this generation. It could be, because I believe if you have that that moral grounding, that you know some things are not right, then you will not be able to indulge in it. But because of all these flashy lifestyle trends, you know, with celebrities and others, and every young 21, 18-year-old wants to keep up with those trends, then they end up messing and going into this whole sponsee. But there's a different approach to it in my culture. In that there are instances where there are relations between somebody maybe who could be 30, 40, 20 years older than a male and a female. Maybe the lady is around 20 years old and the guy is 40, 50, older, 60. But in that kind of environment and context, it's marriage driven.
Okay. It's not about financial or we just want a relationship.
No.
There has to be marriage in there.
There has to be marriage in there.
And earlier you were saying that you're noticing a trend among the young women.
Oh yes. The trend is that many young ladies nowadays are getting married to older men. And for all the right reasons, if you look at it. The Somali culture, for instance, I'll give you an example of that because I come from the Somali culture. You'll find most of the young ladies are hardworking. They go through the education system, ambitious. And then there's a gap with the young men because I think the boy child has kind of been forgotten. You'd see young men indulging in irresponsible behaviors. They want to have their cake and eat it too. So what happens is that these young ladies are drawn to older, more grounded, morally and responsible men. You know, futuristic.
So these are men who are they're already married, have families, so they're coming in as wife number two.
Wife number two, yes. And it's allowed. I mean, it's allowed even in my religion. There's a verse in the Quran that says, marry in twos, threes, and fours. But if you cannot be just to all, stick to one.
Explain that just.
Yes.
Explain
Wow.
that.
I'll give you an example of my family.
Okay.
I come from a polygamous family, and one thing I know for sure is if my dad buys a set of sofas for one house, he has to buy it for the other house, just in terms of material.
Wow, and I'm just now kind of switching gears because that's from a cultural standpoint where, it is more acceptable. I'm wondering where this generation is heading because we're corrupting almost like an entire generation because further in the study, they looked at just more numbers of how they think, these young people. They found a third confessed to having a sponsor. 7 out of 10 young Kenyans were sexually active by 20. A quarter of those conceived by the age of 20. So I'm thinking, okay, it goes well beyond someone wanting someone to take care of them. It's your moral compass is off. When you think about it, Marcus, and what's your take on that?
I want to actually place responsibility on us as men. We really don't understand the power that we actually have because the role of a man in a daughter's or woman's life is affirmation. I have to speak to you in a way that affirms you, that makes you feel worthy, that makes you feel beautiful, that makes you feel loved. And the man that speaks to you in that way is the one to whom you offer your affection. And unfortunately, a lot of us men take advantage of that. Whether consciously or subconsciously, mostly consciously. We take advantage of that fact that we know that if I speak in this manner to this woman, then she will be receptive towards me. And I feel that that's the case that's happening with this sponsee
arrangements, situations.
A lot of these older men understand the value of speaking positively to a woman. A lot of us younger men are so let's go get it that we forget how to be gentle. We forget how to offer affection, how to be loving. If I'm the sponsor, for instance, and this young woman comes to me and I'm offering them this love, this affection, and of course with the love and affection, another language that I understand love and affection is, I'm going to offer you. The word is not money. I'm looking for a different one. I'm going to offer you the resource in the manner that I understand.
Resource.
You're resourcing.
Yes. So if you need
The blessing.
the
Oh, yeah,
blessing.
blessing.
Thank you. I'm going to offer you
Hallelujah.
the blessing. So if you need, if you come to me and say, okay, I need rent, I'm going to bless you.
Yes.
Because that's the language that I understand.
Right.
If you come and say, I need to go do my hair, I'm going to bless you because that's what I understand.
Right.
And you, on the other hand, are understanding that me giving this is my way of offering you love. So both ways, it's a very twisted thing.
It's kind of misconstrued the whole relationship as it should be, but and in South Africa, that's why we're talking about blessing and blessers and blessees. That's what they call it in South Africa. And it's become such a serious issue that it's the Minister for Health. He announced a 3 billion rand campaign to deal with this issue. And it's a 3-year campaign. They're dealing with, let me just run through quickly, decreasing infections in girls and young women, decreasing teenage pregnancy, decreasing sexual and gender-based violence, keeping girls in school, and economic opportunities, or creating economic opportunities for young women to keep them away from sugar daddies or blessers. That's literally an item on that campaign because it's a problem. Tessie.
I think it really highlights the importance of sexual education and teaching people, because at the end of the day we know these things are happening. Like it's not about people not being aware. Like these things happen, and I think it's just about enabling people to make more informed decisions and enabling them to protect themselves and recognizing that they have agency over their own lives. If you want to get a sponsor, I don't know. Like I just feel like it's so nuanced. You don't know why somebody wants to do that. Is it driven by, if it's a flashy lifestyle, and it becomes then a privileged conversation. If you're somebody who has access to a privileged life and you're looking at somebody who doesn't have access but is getting a sponsor to be able to have that, like like if they want to be able to access that and that's the means through which they want to, then
Right.
I just don't know, would you do the same in this situation?
Right, and that's
where
the
are the
thing.
parents?
Where are the parents?
You
It's
know.
like I was looking at this image of the levels of sponsors. 0 was for love, and the highest was trips to Dubai. And people view it that way, where it's really about the money.
money.
And nothing else. And Bonnie, before I get to you, you were watching a video, Amina. You're talking about these arrangements in South Africa, and they have a name there.
Mavuso.
Mavuso.
It's like an event. There's a DJ there, and people are dancing in very funny ways. And then one guy who I think is a DJ says the Mavuso for this week is for this day is 300 rand. Meaning for that night, if the blesser takes you home, then you're blessed with at least 300.
200 rand.
Yes,
Wow.
for that night. It's basically prostitution in a different name.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's just-
exactly.
yeah.
I mean, Bonnie, what do you make of that? Is it willing buyer, willing seller, or something totally different?
I like to look at things from a broader perspective.
Okay.
I think we are witnessing a breakdown of society. Because if you think of the African culture, such things never used to happen. You get them there because if something like that even came out, like even entertainment in the cultural, like songs, you would be written a song. Like songs were for writing. Well, in our culture, we call it quinoa, and to be sung. You would be sung. You get like, how can Vicky do that? And there would be a song, and it would be such an embarrassment.
Yeah.
Ilifunzwa kwa wengine.
Yes, you would never do it again. But we've lost that.
That whole of a child is raised by a village,
Yes,
kind of.
Yes.
Yeah.
And even this person who is blessing you, that rent, if things are thick, like even me, if things are thick, I know I can call this auntie, I can call that uncle, and they're the ones who will sort me, who will
Right.
bless me, who will sponsor me.
Yes.
You get?
What is it that makes having a sponsor that's not your parent wrong? I just want to understand, what is it? What's the issue? Is it that you're giving yourself, like, maybe sexually, is that the problem? Or is it the fact that you're looking for, some financial,
So what's
upgrade
wrong with the
financially?
arrangement?
Yeah, what is wrong?
The risk.
Except for
I
the
think it's the
financial
risk.
transaction. Except from the financial
It's the
transaction.
risk. If my mother gives me money, that account is finished. She's my mother, she's supposed to help me, I'm her son. But if my mother's friend or another lady of her age gives me money, there is a risk there of that relationship going where it's not supposed to go. You get? So if we sort out, even my auntie, you get, if something is sorted out within the family, that is the core unit of society. That is your backup. You get, when things go thick, you usually move to your mothers.
So, Bonnie, what if that unit is not there? Because a
That's
lot of
the
people
point.
don't
That's
have.
the point.
If you
Oh,
don't-
they're
That's the
poor.
point. Yes.
So they don't have any money to give you.
And that makes them more
Susceptible to-
susceptible to
Yeah.
that kind of blessing.
For instance, I'm married, and if I am blessing someone at the expense of my wife,
Yes.
then it's a problem.
Yeah.
If I am blessing someone at the expense of my child, then it's a problem. And even when it's, okay, let's take it even a step further and say, my children are grown up and out of the house. That's fine, that's fantastic, that's brilliant. However, we are living in a society where a lot more, and this is a passion point for me, where a lot more young men need the mentorship.
Yes.
There's a lot of boys who are out there who don't have fathers, whose fathers have neglected them. Is it fair for me to say that I have nothing else to do with my money when there's a young boy somewhere who could do well with spending time with me, with
Right.
having a father figure in
Right.
me? This situation, I fear, is something that a lot of times diverts resources from something that could be more constructive, and it speaks towards the institutional breakdown of society as well.
Yes.
Because if I feel as an older man, or if someone else feels as an older woman, that I have nothing better to expend my money on other than trips to Dubai, platinum level sponsorship,
Yes.
then there is a problem.
Yeah.
Just to respond to Tessie, when it comes to the sponsor-sponsee setting, it's not just the sponsor giving money. There's something pegged to that money.
Yes.
There's a service pegged to
Given
that money.
in return.
Yes.
Give and take.
Which kind of fights the whole moral aspect of society, which contradicts the whole moral aspect of society. So I think it becomes an issue when you're giving yourself, when you're selling your soul at a price.
But the thing is, does everybody see it as selling your soul? How then do we police the way that people use their money and the way that whatever they choose, whatever transactions they choose to have with people, if this is what I want to do, I don't consider it selling my soul. You know, where do, like,
It's
what do
me
you
having
do?
a good time. Well, it's kind of like if we
relative
can.
morality. How
Yeah.
you know, that's the argument. Once you get into relative morality,
Yeah.
you get into a problem.
It's, yes.
Yeah.
But for morality to work, there has to be a standard.
Who
So
then defines that?
Is it society?
So
Society.
who is society?
we are society, and
I may be wrong, but I fear that a lot of the quote-unquote blessed have not been given a chance to actively find what they want.
What if you found yourself and that's the conscious decision that you're making?
if this sponsor, we have to interrogate that
Right.
relationship. Where does it end, and what effect does it have not just on the people but on the society?
Okay.
And if marrying your if it works, if you find someone who's older and the relationship works, and you have to look at what makes that work. But if marrying someone who's slightly your age, you look at that, and that ends up with a good marriage, and it ends up with, I'm not saying that is the only factor, there are very many other
Yes.
factors that contribute to a good marriage.
Yes.
But if that one thing is one of the things that contribute to a good marriage,
Yes.
why not do that?
Yeah.
But I think you're also making the assumption that everyone's life goal or gold standard of life is reaching a marriage. Some people don't want that. Like saying that, like equating, for example, like jumping off a cliff to being in a marriage and then getting off the, like not being in the marriage anymore. I think that's really,
I don't know.
No, but what does that lead to? My question is, you have to interrogate.
Bonnie, are you looking
that
for
person.
like the career sponsee who's 60 years old and this is my life, guys, okay? So if you want to be a sponsee, this is where you end up. So kind of give me like the real story. Or what do you
What
mean?
I'm talking of is you have to interrogate that story, because an Instagram post is not enough to say this is a success. You get?
Yeah.
Having a good and just a trip to Dubai and coming back is not to say, oh, sponsorship is nice.
It's not showing your whole life.
Yeah, it doesn't show your whole life. So you have to look at this sponsor-sponsee relationship, look at it from the beginning, look at where it ends. If it ends in misery, then it's more.
Is that, I wonder if that's
I
the
don't know
case.
whether
Does it end in misery? I don't know.
For a lot of these blessed situations, what the blesser gives is a sense of security. And what the blessed gives to the blesser is also a sense of security in who they are. Yeah?
Tessie's not convinced, but yeah.
And is it the best? Just finish.
Is it the best?
Yeah.
I am in no position to throw rocks at that situation. I live in a glass house. I am human. I don't know.
Yeah.
It is one situation. In each and every situation, it's a situation that I feel everyone should interrogate for
For
themselves,
themselves, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
we completely agree.
and define for themselves.
Amina, you wanted
A
to
quick
respond to-
question, yeah. Why is the trend that most of the men work towards making their own and money and independence, and most of the women, not most, but a majority of women are the ones that are being pulled into this whole sponsee approach. I mean, the thing going on. I think it comes down to making young girls understand that if you've had similar opportunities, you should stop riding on this. If you've had similar opportunities, you're able to achieve as much and even more.
Right.
This whole expectation that just because I'm a woman, I expect to be treated in a
Yeah. Or
different,
to be taken care of.
delicate manner, or being, be taken care of by another man. I think it's what closes our minds. It's what blurs us from the vision that men also have. If you want to go to Dubai, you can take yourself to Dubai.
Yeah, you will find what works for you and what doesn't. And, there's always a price to pay.
Yes.
Everything costs something. There's always a return for whatever. Because, investing something in your life, you'll get a return on it. So good or bad, I guess you'll figure out at the end of your life. All right, let's take a short break here in Victoria's Lounge. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our topic mashup. Now, let's talk about social media and the whole aspect of oversharing. A well-told story study, again, let me go back to them because they, of course, did a study on young people. And social media really is their life, to be honest. That is where they live. So he talked about mobile phones are the channel to gain social capital for young people. And I found that so interesting because that's now a thing, social capital. Yeah, and I guess on social media, the more followers you have or how many hits or likes, really makes or breaks you. And they talked about it being a source of romance, sex, money, fun. That's where they kind of carry out all their social transactions. But this whole thing of people's online reputation sometimes can take a hit, because you can share something of, Bonnie, you're talking during the break, your relationship, me and my boo.
Yes, babe.
Bootings, baitings, hashtag. So, all these things that people feel, some people feel should be private, and others are like, no, I mean, I'm celebrating my love and my relationship. Why should I be relegated to having it private? So, I mean, what do you make of that, Bonnie?
Yeah.
And have you fallen victim? Just putting it there.
That's a pregnant pause.
Yes, I was a bit naive. I should have known better being in the media. But yes, it does put certain strain on your relationship, because especially when you're a public figure. And because you see, there are things, and I liked Maureen Kunga. I watched a clip of her, because she never, Ilani Group, the whole of them, even Churchill, they never give out their private lives and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And the explanation is so good, because the thing is, you, as Bonnie Bones, have accepted to be a public figure. And I know the price.
This is the life you've signed up for.
I signed
Yes,
up on the
yeah.
dotted line, not complaining.
Yeah.
But my girlfriend or my sister or my parents, they have not signed up for that. You get? So when you put them in, one, you're putting them at risk, and you're throwing a heavy burden on them that they have not signed up for.
Yeah.
Two, it puts an extra strain on your relationship. Because, for example, if you're having a tiff over something small, you get, and then it gets blown out.
Yeah.
Like I've known of couples, of famous couples, which are having beef. One person goes to this media station, the other person goes to this media station, and
We're fighting it out now in the public space.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the problem with social media is, on my phone, I feel safe, because you're sharing maybe in your home, it feels safe, and you don't see the public. If it was like if you're somewhere on a podium, there are things which you wouldn't say, because you're seeing the people. But the problem with this, it lies to you about, this is safe.
Right.
There is a false safety that you don't see. So you're more open, and you're more opening, and you're just sharing. And like you're saying, even something like a text, someone will screenshot it and share it everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
So we need to realize that when I'm putting out a text, or when I'm putting out
It's never private.
you have to think of yourself in City Stadium or at Kasarani,
Yes.
and you're saying it.
Yeah, yeah.
You get?
Yeah.
So whatever you're doing, you have to understand that this is the public.
And I think beyond that, it can jeopardize job opportunities. It can jeopardize, I heard of universities looking at social media to see whether or not to admit someone, or insurance companies going to your Facebook or Twitter to see whether they give you the policy or not. And I was thinking, whoa, I mean, that's serious. People don't think about that, especially young people who, hey, I was partying with my friends. What's the big deal, Tessie? And you coming fresh off campus life, where sharing that is normal, but it can jeopardize your future prospects.
Yeah. I think people transition from using social media as something personal to it becoming perhaps more of like a brand. You're trying to develop a brand, because I feel like with social media these days, you have the opportunity to develop a career. Like, people actually start careers of oversharing. Like, you might consider what someone, like blogs, for example. I write, and I don't have like a niche in terms of fashion or beauty or food, but some of the things I write, some people would say consider oversharing, but at the same time, it's also a really great opportunity to connect with people.
Okay.
It's also a really good platform to get perhaps invited to forums, or you get to share, on certain issues that you feel passionate about. So I think there's a lot of thought that goes into it, whether it's you're trying to show, that you live a certain way, or you're trying to get people to think that you think this way, and I think that that's the great thing. You get to have control over your narrative.
Yeah. Interesting, you talk about control of your narrative. Can you imagine that kids are concerned about their online image? There was a study done, this was in the US, and they asked kids, so how do you feel about mom sharing embarrassing photos of you online? And the kids said, no, I mean, they should ask me first for my consent. And these are 10-year-olds saying that. And then in France, they're about to go as far as kids possibly suing their parents for putting up, photos or videos that could damage them in the future. And I'm thinking, whoa. And the parent is probably innocently just putting up, oh, look at, little Bonnie there, yeah, exactly. I mean, when it comes to sharing photos of children, what's your take on that? Because yes, now you're sharing it with the world, not even just friends, by the way.
Yes.
You're sharing with the world. And I have my own personal, issues with it, but go ahead.
I'm a frequent user of social media. And I'm also a very conservative person. I wouldn't encourage the extremes of suing your parents, or but sometimes they do it with no bad intentions.
It's out of
they
love,
just want it's
yeah,
out of love,
yeah.
yes. But I also would advise people not to share their children's photos, especially on social media, because the online village is no longer as safe as we'd hoped it would be. There's the pedophilia, there are kidnappers out there.
Exactly.
There are people who are trying to do some harm to others. So it would be better if you were able to not expose your children that much out there. There are people maybe who have issues against you personally.
Yeah.
So people are capable of doing funny things to
Not
kids
everyone
that are
means
innocent.
well for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Probably have maybe 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 followers on your Facebook, on your Twitter. Not most of them have your capability in terms of finance and all this.
Right.
When you're always brushing it in your face and showing the perfection you have and how well accomplished your babies are and how well achieved it's not fair. It creates a gap.
So being careful of what you post, so you don't kind of I guess marginalize other people and make them feel less than. But I'll end with you, Marcus, on the whole point of this is another end of oversharing, where someone could be very vulnerable and talk about a bad day or go as far as maybe suicidal or wanting to carry out an attack, the darker part of it. How do we deal with that when you see those kind of warning signs of someone sharing that? Or if that person who's going through maybe depression or whatever, and they feel, well, this is my only outlet, so I put it on to social media, how would you advise them to do it differently?
In such a case, I would actually encourage the sharing thereof. And this is why. For a person to get to the point where they feel like the only people that will listen to me, hopefully, are the people who follow me on Twitter, on Instagram, or on Facebook, then that means that it actually is the only hope that they have.
A cry for help.
Yes.
There, yeah.
That is actually a cry for help, because they possibly feel that they can't trust whoever is around them. Maybe my friends wouldn't take it seriously, or maybe my parents would take it seriously, or whatever the case may be. But in such a case, I actually would encourage someone. It's social media in that context serves as some form of personal version of a helpline.
Okay.
And in that case, now the responsibility is upon us, because unfortunately I have seen 3 cases in the last year alone where someone has put out a cry for help on social media, and in the vast majority, the reaction was, oh, go ahead and do it, which is a worrisome reaction.
Yeah.
Because even in those reactions, it seemed like people were egging on for the recognition of the catalyst to a situation that is now newsworthy, and therefore I played
And
a
you're
part.
okay with being that person?
Yes.
I mean, wow.
know.
That is just crazy.
Desperation for attention.
Yeah,
Exactly. It actually
Can
is a
actually push to
desperation
the
for
extreme.
attention.
Yeah.
So my take on that is, when someone does feel the need to share such on social media,
Yeah.
I would say yes, please do it. And do it because, having been through it myself, through such a situation myself, I know that there are people who will reach out to you. I will reach out. There are people who reach. One of these cases was one that was brought to my attention because someone WhatsApped me and said, listen, go reach out to this guy because they don't seem to be in a good place.
Yeah.
And we need more of such. So if that is going to save a life,
Okay.
then yes.
Wow. So oversharing can help in some instances.
can, yeah.
Wow.
Because it did save a life in that one case.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yes.
Wow. That is amazing. That totally flipped my whole view on that thing. I think a perfect place to end this conversation. Thank you so much, Marcus, to Tessie, Boniface, and Amina. Thank you so much for your insights. And that does it for this episode of Victoria's Lounge. Thank you to Sarana for hosting us. And let's do this next week. Remember, keep the conversation going on social media. #Victoria's Lounge. Have a wonderful night.